He was just a young boy sitting in the courtroom, his small hands clenched tight, his eyes burning with a mix of fear and courage. The crowd whispered, the lawyers smirked, and even the judge seemed ready to dismiss him as nothing more than a child. But when he stood up to defend his mother, what he revealed left everyone frozen in silence. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button right now and show some love to her, because what you're about to hear will remind you how powerful the bond between a child and a parent truly is. The boy's name was Marcus, only 12 years old, yet his life had already been carved by pain, resilience, and the kind of responsibility no child should have to carry. His mother, Angela, had been dragged into court on charges she did not deserve, accused of fraud by a wealthy employer who wanted to silence her after she discovered the truth about his corruption. The courtroom was packed that day, not because her case was important to the public, but because her employer was a man of power in the city, a man whose money bought influence, and many came to watch what they thought would be another spectacle where the poor would be crushed beneath the boots of the rich. Marcus sat quietly beside his mother's lawyer, a thin, weary man who had already admitted to Angela that the case was stacked against her. "They've got evidence we can't fight," he whispered before the trial, "and the jury won't see past who he is and who you are." But Angela only held her son's hand tighter, whispering back, "The truth has a way of speaking, even when no one wants to hear it." When the proceedings began, the prosecution painted Angela as a desperate woman, someone who had tried to manipulate company records for her own gain, someone untrustworthy, someone to be dismissed. Each word cut into Marcus like a blade, and he watched as strangers sneered at his mother, whispering judgments, some even chuckling at the thought of a poor single black woman daring to stand against a man of wealth. But Marcus knew the truth, his mother wasn't a criminal. She was the reason he ate at night, the reason he had clothes, the reason he had hope. And more than that, she was the one who had uncovered files showing how her employer had stolen millions from pension funds, files she had tried to report but had been threatened into silence. What no one knew was that Marcus himself had seen those files. He had watched late one night as his mother, exhausted, had shown him the documents and whispered, "If anything happens to me, you hold on to this, Marcus. You tell the truth." That night, Marcus had hidden a USB drive deep inside his worn-out backpack, too afraid to admit he was carrying something that could change everything. As the trial dragged on, the prosecutor made jokes that drew laughter from the crowd, belittling Angela, questioning her integrity, making it sound absurd that a woman like her could have the intelligence or courage to accuse a man of such stature. Marcus clenched his fists under the table, his heart pounding, until finally, when the judge asked if there were any further witnesses, he rose to his feet. The courtroom erupted in laughter. "A child," one juror muttered under his breath. What could he possibly say? The prosecutor smirked, raising his hands as though to invite the boy forward, certain that this would only make Angela look more desperate. But Marcus walked with steady steps, his small frame carrying a weight larger than anyone in that room could see. He stood before the judge, his voice trembling at first, but then growing stronger with every word. "You're all laughing at me," he said, scanning the room, "but you don't know what I know. You don't know what my mom risked, what she sacrificed. You think she's a liar, but I've seen the truth." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but motioned for him to continue. Marcus reached into his backpack, pulling out the small, scratched USB drive, holding it up for everyone to see. "This has everything," he said firmly. "Every dollar he stole, every file he changed, every life he ruined. My mom didn't make up a story, she was trying to protect people like you, people like your families. And you laugh because I'm just a boy. That doesn't change the truth." The room fell into silence. Even the prosecutor, who moments ago had been brimming with confidence, froze as Marcus handed the USB to the bailiff. The judge ordered a recess, the files were projected on the screen, and slowly, painfully, the truth unraveled in front of everyone's eyes. Documents appeared showing the employer funneling retirement funds into offshore accounts, signatures forged, dates altered, evidence too overwhelming to ignore. The laughter that had once filled the room now turned into gasps, whispers, and then an uncomfortable silence that even the judge couldn't break. Marcus stood beside his mother, his hand gripping hers, tears welling in his eyes, not from fear anymore but from relief that the world finally saw what she had been fighting for. The prosecutor tried to object, to claim the files were fabricated, but forensic experts were called in, verifying the authenticity of every document. One juror even looked away in shame, remembering how he had chuckled at the boy's bravery minutes earlier. Angela didn't gloat, didn't shout in triumph, she simply bowed her head, whispering a prayer of gratitude, knowing that the son she raised had become her voice when the world refused to listen. But the story didn't end there. The employer, desperate and cornered, tried to strike a deal, offering millions in hush money. Angela refused, saying firmly, "Justice is not for sale." That night, news outlets across the country reported on the trial, calling Marcus, the boy who silenced the courtroom. Interviews poured in, but Marcus wasn't interested in fame. All he cared about was making sure his mother's name was cleared, her dignity restored, and the people who had been robbed by greed finally received justice. Yet behind the glory was danger. The employer had powerful friends, and threats began to follow. Anonymous letters arrived at their door, men lingered outside their home. Marcus once again found himself afraid, but his mother reminded him, the truth will always face enemies, but it will never die. With community support, lawyers rallied behind Angela, civil groups raised funds, and eventually, the employer was sentenced to years in prison, his empire crumbling as the truth spread. Marcus sat in the back of that final hearing, remembering the laughter, remembering the smirks, and realizing that courage is not about being fearless, it's about standing when everyone expects you to fall. The story of Marcus and his mother became more than a trial, it became a reminder across America that no matter how small you feel, no matter how dismissed you are, truth has power. And sometimes, it takes the voice of a child to wake the conscience of a nation. So tell me, from which part of the country are you watching this story right now?